This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
I am glad to be here because out there sucks.
No kidding. Hey everybody, welcome back. We have a couple of things to talk about before the chapters, but we tentatively plan to go through 3 chapters today. It's going to be a lot of pages.
About 50.
The first chapter is a Rand chapter. A lot of meat, a lot of good stuff in there. I think we'll talk about it for like an hour. You know, we'll have a lot of good context that we usually do on these chapters. Not the longest. The second chapter is incredibly long, but it's Egwene in the tower, and it is, other than the speech at the end to Elida, I find the rest of the chapter to be hard to talk about.
I think it's a lot like an action scene. There's a lot of good stuff, but it's so exactly what it says it is.
Exactly,
that
yes. There's not a lot to talk about. It's like,
but there's
yep,
an
that happens.
Excellent speech.
Right.
I mean, it's Egwene at peak Egwene, just Egwening so hard all over everything. It's going to be fun.
It's going to be fun. And so there's like a lot of stuff in there that I'm like, this happens. This is cool. This is what we've been talking about. This is what we've been building up to. And then the third chapter is a nothing burger Avienda chapter. That's exactly like the previous Avienda chapter.
Yeah. Yeah, we get diminishing returns as we go through the 3 chapters today.
So we'll probably spend most of our time on the first chapter and then blow through the next 2 relatively quickly. So we scheduled a 3-chapter episode today, which is rare for us, but we're going to make it happen.
Truly, that last chapter is nothing.
No.
There's one incredibly notorious scene, but we have nothing to say other than that it's a notorious scene, right? Like, no. Anyway, oh my God, though. I saw an amazing picture yesterday. It was Robert Jordan's nephew sitting in RJ's chair, like the big curved dragon throne chair, like in the same pose as his uncle, like at roughly the same age. Like he's now old enough that like he can be taken at roughly the same age as RJ. And just RJ looks like a dapper Southern gentleman from another era. He looks amazing, and then his nephew looks, very much like him, has the same like long, tall pose, and it's just like, wow, the Randolph Thor is so strong.
The genetics work
so strong. It's just like that is Rand right there. Like I know, there's a million fan arts, there's Yosha, but like there's something about this nephew where I'm just like, no, that one has Rand. That's the one carrying the torch. Beautiful picture. I'll see if I can find it and put it to our social media. Really cool comparison.
I mean, it's obvious to me that Jordan was doing a somewhat self-insert in Rand, right? Especially the more you find out about his experiences in Vietnam and how, those apply to Rand and the way he's experiencing trauma and war and that sort of thing.
I had the thought the other day that we know Robert Jordan was neurodivergent because you can acquire neurodivergence through trauma. That is encompassed within the definition of neurodivergence.
Sure, PTSD
by the
is,
creators.
Yeah.
The people who coined the term very explicitly included trauma-induced brain changes as part of neurodivergence. So he was, in fact, by definition, one of us in the broadest neurodivergent sense.
Come on, the man read a book a day. Of course, like...
Well, and then there's that. And then there's that. Then there's his pipe collection and his gremlin cottage full of artifacts and
his obsession with a certain subject that he was making money off of it, so he can't really...
His obsession with like a zillion different subjects that he would hyper-focus on and then write one chapter about and then move on to the next one. Just serial hyper-focus tunnels. I actually really want to go do a podcast appearance on an autistic culture podcast with the pitch Wheel of Time is autistic or Robert Jordan was autistic or something like that. Like that be the pitch for the episode.
Come on, there's nothing in these books to suggest he had an hyper sense of right and wrong.
No, absolutely not. No.
None of that. All right. I'm going to read us in.
All right. Do it.
Because we need a place to begin on these chapters. Oh, look, a place to begin.
Starting with chapter 15.
Chapter 15, a place to begin. The header is a dragon because, again, we are incredibly literal in these chapters. Rand woke on the floor of a hallway. He sat up, listening to the distant sound of water. The stream outside the manor house? No, No, that was wrong. The walls and the floor here were stone, not wood. No candles or lamps hung from the stonework, and yet there was light, ambient in the air. He stood, then straightened his red coat, feeling strangely unafraid. He recognized this place from somewhere, distant in his memory. How had he come here? The recent past was clouded and seemed to slip from him, like fading trails of mist. No, he thought firmly. His memories obeyed, snapping back into place before the strength of his determination. He had been in the Damani Manor house, awaiting a report from Ruark about the capture of the first few members of the Merchant Council. Min had been reading Each Castle, a biography in the deep green chair of the room they shared. Rand had been exhausted, as he often was lately. He'd gone to lie down. He was asleep then. Was this the world of dreams? Though he had visited on occasion, he knew of very few specifics. Egwene and the Aiel Dreamwalkers spoke of it only guardedly. This place felt different from the dream world and oddly familiar. So he's in a dream shard.
Yeah, is that what this is? This is a Moradin dream shard.
This is Moradin's dream
just
shard.
Like what
Yeah.
Bubble joined into the way that Egwene joined with Gawain or whatever.
Right. It's just, we hear it described. Basically, it's a place where Moradin has more control than he would over the general dream world of dreams, because it has no sort of analog in the real world. He can shape it to be what he wants. And that's something, I think we hear Grendel think about that when she goes and visits him. And so when he talks about this feels like the world of dreams, but it's different. I've been here before, but not in a long time. It's not the world of dreams, because he has been in the world of dreams more recently. This is Moradin's specific dream shard. And we see this, it's been charred and burned, right? And that's from their fight in Eye of the World.
Why? How did the fight affect? Just because it's part of his like mental landscape?
Yeah. Something was different this time. Something about the colors. Many of the stones were black, as if they'd been burned, and cracks laced them. Distant red light glowed from within. There had once been a table here, hadn't there? His boots clicking on stones that burned. So I don't know. I feel like this place is on fire in a way. In the same way that, remember how, like, I don't know, Moradin had half his face burned away, and that kind of affected the world of dreams, right? Even if the battle didn't take place here, there's something about this that is the core of Ishamael that was burned, either when Rand thrust his sword through him or when he actually killed him.
Gotcha. I wonder if that's why he's taken the color scheme of black and red in his real world appearances. I wonder if that's why he's decided that's his color scheme at this point in time. Because it wasn't Ishamael's color scheme, it's Moradin's color scheme.
Right. But it was Rand's color scheme before it was Moradin's color scheme. And once they crossed streams, all of a sudden Moradin started picking it up.
I feel like Rand was more of a red and black guy, and Moradin's more of a black and red guy.
What's the difference between blue-green and green-blue anyway?
Which one is more predominant
in
the mix?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the best I got. Because I thought that he had made the dream shard black and red because he's into the black and red thing, but now I'm wondering if maybe he's into the black and red thing because everything's burned and crispy on his psyche.
Mm-hmm. That is that, like, the burned flesh with just red, like that was when he was striped like that. That was the whole thing in the Great Hunt. Is then they went to the dream world, which was striped like his face, and when you flew up and you could see from a high, you were on his face, right? That was that crazy parallel world. Sorry, portal stone world.
Right. Yeah.
And then we get this, like, Rand had been exhausted, as he often was lately, right? I think there's a lot of overlap between Moradin and Rand, and one's exhaustion is affecting the other.
Yeah, for sure. Moradin comments on it here. It seems like they are definitely tired enough for two men at any given time.
Well, and I think Moradin that's his exhaustion of existence, right? He's so tired of being alive. He just wants it to end. And I think that exhaustion is what Rand is feeling.
Right, you can't sleep that off.
No. We see, let's see, there's the clouds of an impending storm. They almost look like a lava lamp to me. The clouds grew and sprang from one to the other like bubbles in boiling water. Yeah.
Definitely. I'm like, why is that frightening? That just sounds like a really good lava lamp.
And there's just a lot of continuation of some of the Eye of the World themes. It really feels like Sanderson went back and read Eye of the World and kind of reproduced some of that stuff here.
Yeah.
The rats being burned alive, and then they have hands like people because they're not rats. They're actually people's souls they're dark friends who have betrayed him that he's torturing in the world of dreams at night, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely gives you strong, like, Sanderson wanted to really capture what he could of the Eye of the World spookiness, like the unreality that is the first few times Ishamael appears. Sanderson was like, I want my first few appearances of Moradin to have the same deeply
Vibe.
unsettling, unearthly quality.
So we get a description of Moradin as they meet. Tall and youthful, he had a square face and ancient blue eyes that reflected the hearth fire, turning his irises almost purple. So more of just like that's what Rand's going to look like in the future, which I always think is fun.
He's going to have purple eyes, just like Alana in Tortal. How dare you?
And then we get a lot of these references to him in visions, right? There's a lot of crunchy world building stuff going on in this next chunk, right?
Yeah.
He's seen the man in visions, not unlike the ones that appeared when he thought of Matt Perrin, but they're not the same, right? It's not Ta'Veren connecting this. This is the Balefire streams crossing. Rand had almost felt as if he could reach out and touch this man. He'd been afraid of what would happen if he did, right? That reach out and touching thing is what ends up causing the body swap, right? This is foreshadowing body swap right here.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? What would happen if you reach out and touch him? You body swap. That's what happens, right? They're very well connected. He's like, he only met the man once at Shadar Logoth, right? Referencing that moment when they crossed streams. That was really important, even though he doesn't specifically talk about it. He's like, remember, they met at Shadar Logoth. This is the Wanderer, just in case you were wondering, right? Because, I mean, that was a big speculation. The Wanderer, the Watcher, and I forget what the third one was, but it was like, they all ended up being Moradin.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And we tried to figure out who these people were, and it was a back in book 7, he was referred to as the Wanderer, and like, yeah, now we know who he is, and now Rand knows who he is. Interesting, also crunchy bit. Rand's not able to see Matt Perrin when he thinks about them.
Yeah, he doesn't hear Lews Therin either. He's alone in his own skull for once.
So I think those are two very unrelated things, sort of.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. Tell me more.
The first one, him not seeing Matt Perrin, is because I think he's in Ishamael's dream shard. This is a bubble off of reality, and so he's not seeing the swirls. It's either because he's in Teleron Riyadh, and the swirls are related to Teleron Riyadh, so you can't see them if you're in, right, the world of dreams, right? Because they are of the world of dreams. Or it's the fact that he's outside of reality a little bit in the dream shard. Because he's not in the world of dreams, he's kind of outside of the pattern in this attached bubble to the pattern. You're not liking that one.
I don't like the idea of things existing outside of the pattern. I find that to be sort of paradoxical.
Not necessarily outside the pattern, but yeah, that's fair.
But I totally could buy that you can't have Teleron Riyadh effects out inside Teleron Riyadh, kind of like how the Dream Spike has certain rules about where it can and can't exist. I could totally believe that the Ta'Veren visions, Min visions, things of that nature would be just completely inapplicable in Teleron Riyadh and other Teleron Riyadh adjacent spaces, because this is more Teleron Riyadh than anything else.
Yes.
Dream shards are technically different, but it's closer to that than any other mechanism.
But they can sort of pinch off and like separate, right, in a way that they're completely unconnected from the pattern.
Right. It's built on that template, but it is not of the same literal matrix.
And then the other issue that we talked about is the fact that he's not hearing Lews Therin. And this one stumped me for a while. Because I'm like, he's been in Teleron Riyadh, and that, like, he's obviously been able to hear Lews Therin before in Teleron Riyadh. So I don't believe it has anything to do with the Dream Shard or being in the world of dreams.
Okay.
I think it's because he's not in his own body. He came to Moradin. He's in Moradin's dreams. He's in Moradin's head. He's not in his own head. What's in his head? The taint that makes him insane. I think in Moradin's body, he's not insane anymore. The pieces of him fit together better. He has the memories of Lews Therin without the voice of Lews Therin. Because remember, the memories are real. The voice is fake. The voice is a production of the madness. So if the voice is gone, it's because the taint is in Rand's head. He's not in his own head. He's in Moradin's head. And there's no taint there. And so he just has the memories without the insanity.
I mean, that definitely fits with all the evidence we've got. That's some highly technical hand-wavy magic, but like, no, that totally makes sense. But like, Moradin's still using his body. Does that mean Moradin is starting to hear like the whispers of a madman in his head?
I mean, something's going on there. They're all sort of sharing a brain. I would not be surprised if Moradin's like, why am I hearing Louis Theron in my head? I don't have any evidence for that, but I wouldn't be surprised, or I wouldn't. That's something that could be, I think, written in.
Also, like, I mean, he's got so many intrusive thoughts in his head. Would he even be able to notice Louis Theron adding himself to the chorus? Like,
but yeah, the taint, as Tavernus is saying, the taint's a physical manifestation, right? So like,
you get a new body, you get
the way we see Nynaeve pry it
yeah.
off, right? She literally pries it off their brain like a physical thing, right? So if you get a new body, you're going to restart.
Right, because Moradin's body has been protected from the taint by the connection with the Dark One.
Exactly.
Because it's Ishamael's soul that is inhabiting that body. That is a tricky way to get out of your mental illness, my dude. I'll just steal another man's brain.
Yep. I honestly think that's what he's doing. He's thinking with another man's brain that's not tainted.
That is some tricksy hobbitses is what that is.
And I don't think that thing's attached to the soul, right? Like, I just don't. I don't think.
No, the way Nynaeve describes it is very like it's very physical. It's very attached to the body.
And I also don't feel like the insanity, is reborn with you. If you die and are reborn, you're not reborn insane as a tainted male.
Yeah, that doesn't seem fair. That doesn't seem fair at all.
Which was our first clue that LTT in Rand's head is not real.
Because
that and the fact that like he was cleansed of insanity before he died, right? So the idea that he's insane in Rand's head couldn't be real because LTT was cleansed of the taint and then died. So if the LTT in Rand's head was real, was like was the soul come back, it wouldn't be insane.
Right, because I remember this evidence from you because you're like, real Louis Theron was cleansed of the taint, but nobody knows that. And Rand's vision of LTT is insane because it's a vision of LTT based on legends, not an actual manifestation of LTT who we know was cleansed. I remember this argument. God, I remember being at the library listening to you making that argument.
Oh, time.
Being like, I gotta go into Discord when I get home from school and like go make a comment. Like,
so that was there's a lot of crunchiness in these couple of paragraphs, right? Like lot of crunchy. Talar and Riyadh, crossing streams, insanity stuff, taint stuff. Like it's thick. There's a lot to talk about here.
Right, and then. If you're done with that particular paragraph, then we get to also reiterate with Ishamael Moradin, like, stop whining that dreams aren't real, dude. Yeah. Like, stop it. Like, haven't you learned by now that dreams are just as real as reality, if not more so?
Mm-hmm. It's like, why do you always say it's just a dream? And like,
that doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, it is.
And Egwene will show us how important that is when she crushes Masana's mind in a dream.
Right. Or, I mean, just the fact that you can kill somebody in a dream and they die in real life, right? Like, that alone makes it real.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then there's that fun one. I killed you. Yeah, well, I watched you kill yourself. So we're both dead men who are coming back, which I think that's a fun little parallel.
Yeah, for sure. He's like, yes, I've seen you die too. Like, big whoop.
Resurrected in very different manners, right? Moradin, resurrected by the Dark One, keeps his mind. Rand, resurrected by the pattern, didn't. But then the Dark One gave him his mind back through the taint, which he makes that point in this chapter.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's almost like the Dark One wanted to lose the whole time.
It's almost like evil defeats itself.
Every time.
Every time. It's in fantasy, at least.
Which is definitely a predictor for the real world.
No.
Every time.
No. It's very important to me that you know that's not true, right?
I know it's not true, but it sounded so nice. It made me feel good and safe. But no, I know we have to fight evil, and it's a forever fight, and that's why the Veins of Gold is going to slap so hard when we get there.
And so this Rand has the realization that I had in book 7 that you're really going to be hard to finish this series if the Forsaken keep coming back to life. And you kill one every book. Like, it's really going to be hard to finish the series if that's the pattern you're going for. And I think that he has realized, like, oh, that's not what I'm doing anymore. Like, I don't need to fight the Forsaken. I need to fight the Dark One.
Right. Because the Dark One can just keep resurrecting the Forsaken, right? It's like, yeah. And also, again, if it's Brandon Sanderson looking at us, the audience, and saying, yeah, I understand I got to actually start pulling these numbers down, like, for real.
Interesting that Moradin gives over the balefire clue.
I mean, he wants it to end. He doesn't want to win. He wants it to end.
Yeah. People always ask, why doesn't Moradin balefire himself or get balefired? Like, why is that not his way to end it? And it's like, that doesn't end your soul. We talked about this before, but I want to reiterate. Like, you still get reborn into the pattern. It just means the Dark One can't reborn you. Resurrect you. Reborn you, Jesus.
What algo speak is happening?
Apparently, we are rebaptizing people in the Dark One's image. Long ago, I promised you the Great Lord could restore your lost love. Do you not think he can easily recover one who serves him? So this is evidence. Remember, we went through a big debate when Rand said, I can bring your mother back. And she's like, Rand, please help me. He tortures me. Like, that is a horrific scene.
Yeah. Sure seems like it might have been happening. Like it might have been real.
Yeah, so it really does seem that at least Brandon is writing this as though the Dark One does have access to Rand's mother. And Moradin's like, yeah, no shit. Or he could just be reiterating his own lie, right? He could be reinforcing that lie. But at this point, it doesn't seem like there's a point to that.
I mean, it's always the greatest irony when the father of lies can use truth to hurt you and confuse you about what to do, right? Like, that's the best irony, is when the people notorious for lying don't even have to lie to fuck with you.
Well, and the best lies are mostly truth, right?
Right. But I don't like the idea that just any soul can be swooped up by literal Satan. I don't like that cosmology. I feel like if you're a decent
you should
person, that shouldn't be... Yeah, you should at least have opened the door a little bit. Like, you can't just be a general person just vibing, doing your thing.
Which, of course, opens to the door to the Carryall Thor was a Darkfriend.
Well,
because that's the only way the Dark One can get a hold of her soul.
Or he was lying about having his mother.
Like,
I mean, those are the two. Because he could easily steal Kari's image.
Right.
Because master of illusions, right? Like, he could make a simulacrum of Kari. Whatever that fucking word is. Y'all know what I meant.
The word we both learned from reading and have never heard out loud because it's not used in common language, but I knew exactly what you're talking about. Remember, if you can't pronounce a word, but you know how it's used, it means you learned it from reading. Congratulations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Simulacrum is how I read it.
Simulacrum.
We get to see the saw in Moradin's eyes. Small black flecks floated about in the whites, crossing back and forth like bits of ash blown on the leisurely wind. So the early saw that turned into the, yin yang in Rand's eye later. And again, we've speculated, and I'm pretty sure this is the case, that the saw are the early version of the flames in Beelzemon's eyes and mouth.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the saw burn you from the inside out, but it starts out as just an innocent little optical illusion.
It's just like the little bits of taint get into you and float around, and then slowly, it's almost like radiation, right?
That's what I was just thinking. It's like if your eyes started to glow, and then you just got more and more glowy until you were completely on fire. Like, it's very much like radiation. Yeah. Then Moradin pulls out his, after telling Rand to be real about dreams, he's then very unrealistic about hope. He's like, well, eventually you're not going to have any hope. So you might as well just give up on having hope now and just roll over and lose. And like Veins of Gold, the entire revelation, or not even Veins of Gold, but the actual revelation that Rand has during the last battle is like, but as long as we hope, we win. Mm-hmm. Saying that there's no hope means that you lost.
Right.
These are paradoxical things you're trying to convince me of, sir.
You're trying to convince me that there's no hope, because by convincing me there's no hope, you win, and then there's no hope.
Right, but as long as I choose to keep hoping, then I'm winning.
Yeah.
So...
Why wouldn't I keep hoping to win? Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, you're a dumbass, Elon.
Well, and it's also like the turning of the wheel. Like, yes, the wheel turns over and over and over again, but the Dark One's outside of time. He only gets to touch the world once. And for, even though the wheel is spinning and passing by the last battle with every turning, it's the same point for the Dark One. It's the same touch.
Right. For the Dark One, it's not a spiral.
It's not a spiral.
For everyone else, it's a spiral. But for the Dark One, it's really not.
Yeah. And so because he's lost once means he will always lose.
Right. Because the one thing you cannot take away from humans is their capacity to hope. Like an individual, yes, which is why breaking Rand as a person is so important. But like as a species, no, one of us is gonna be hopeful about something. We're obnoxious like that.
And this is why I say the Dark One can never win. He will always lose. Now, Rand at some point in some turning of the wheel can destroy the wheel. We can destroy the wheel as people, but the Dark One can never win. We can just lose.
Right. The Dark One's entire job is convincing us to lose.
Yeah.
Convincing us to lose. It's a convincing. That's why that's why Cadspain's heart is in the right place, even as all of her methods are wildly askew. Like, she understands that the Dark One's mission is to break Rand's spirit, not to break his armies.
Yeah, so the Dark One, he says, basically, I want to kill the Dark One, and Moradin laughs at him, right? Because he's like, you still don't understand what the Dark One is. And we see that in the last battle.
I doubt you can understand the magnitude of the stupidity of your statement. It's such a good diss.
Mm-hmm. It's such a good diss. I love that line. And it makes sense. Like, killing the Dark One kills the freedom of choice people have to choose good or bad or somewhere in between. And that takes away free will.
Right. It's a weird way of Robert Jordan almost getting that the binary isn't actually the way. Right? Like, Rand actually genuinely thinks he can create a true binary. Like, Robert Jordan's like, no. We actually need, like, mostly a binary with a sprinkle of chaos. He doesn't quite get it when it comes to regular people, but he does get it when it comes to metaphysics, that, like, true binary is not how nature works. And if you try to force that, you're gonna lose something.
That's why you need balance.
Yeah. And it turns out balance is not binary. Balance is more complicated than that.
Right. Yeah, it's and that's where we talk about gradients and spectrums, for example. Yes. And that you can have a balance between two ends of a spectrum, and that doesn't mean putting weight at both ends of the spectrum and only at both ends of the spectrum. You have weight all along the spectrum, and the beam can balance. Then you have a balance beam, which brings us to gymnastics for some reason.
Right. It's good to stay flexible in trying times.
Nice.
I admire stand-up comedians so much.
Oh gosh, the yes and is so good.
It's so good. So yeah, Rand leaves the dream by grabbing the power.
There's Moradin complains about Semirog a little bit, and we don't see his hand. So there's a question of like, does he have the hand?
He does. He flexes the hand in
That's
pain
right.
a couple of times.
Yeah.
But he has a hand.
He has a hand, but somehow that affected him, right? Like,
he's got a phantom missing hand.
Yeah.
Just like Rand has a phantom present hand, right? Like,
that's right. Yeah, Rand does describe being able to feel the hand still there. And like that's very common in paraplegics, but that might be because he's feeling Moradin's hand.
I mean, I think it's both. That's normal for when you lose a part of your body, like to have phantom pains, but like Moradin's also feeling phantom pains and Rand's feeling Moradin, so like there's layers.
Here's my thought. Moradin's not in pain. His hand is completely numb because it essentially has no hand, right?
So that means that Rand's phantom limb is actually moving.
Yes.
Like when he checks in on it periodically, it's in different positions because Moradin is using it.
Yeah.
Oh, but he's going around with a hand that just feels all tingly and numb and weird. Oh, that sounds so uncomfortable. I mean, it is Moradin, so I don't care, but like, that sounds so weird.
Yeah, that's my theory, is that they're feeling each other's hands. And obviously, since there's no hand there for Moradin to feel, he's feeling phantom limb syndrome, essentially, even though he can move it. It's weird. Yeah, it's like ultimate pins and needles, right? Like,
And he's mad at Semirog about that, which, like, fair.
Yeah. And then he follows that with, I do not know what would happen to us if we killed each other. Which is like, yeah, if you're like, what happens if you kill the body that you are more connected to? Like, yeah, it's a very weird, like, would they both die if one of them died?
I mean, I almost feel like it would like unravel a knot of balefire actions. It would like compound and like their actions would be like undone going back like tenfold in time because they like killed each other, and it would just, I don't think it'd be good for the pattern.
No.
I think the pattern would have like a blazing hole ripped in it.
God, what if they not only killed each other but fired each other, or one of them fired the other one?
Right, yeah. And then the Dark One's like, wow, that escalated past where I wanted it to. It's just the Dark One and Fane just hanging out in the void after, like, so you want to create a universe or something? Like,
No, and it's like, it makes sense that once they've switched bodies, they separate out and one can die without the other one, because now, like, Rand is in the body he's connected to and Morden's
right,
in the
they're
body.
mid-swap right now.
But they're mid-swap, yeah. They're halfway through. So they're still really connected.
Yeah, they're a chemical reaction halfway through the reaction time.
Right. How did Rand come to be? That's through the bond, right? This is Moradin in his own dream shard, and Rand thinks he's dreaming, but because he's in Moradin's body, he just shows up in that dream. And it surpasses all of his barriers because it's going through his own head. He's not going through the barriers to get out of his head. And then we have Min.
Yeah.
Because Rand basically stops dreaming. He goes into sleep. Rand falls asleep for real instead of being in the world of dreams.
And spends like a whole 5 minutes having actual sleep, while Min is like, oh, good. He's finally going to like settle down and rest again. And she's moved on to a couple more books. I was kind of tracking the titles of the books. She reads like 5 different books in the course of this, like not cover to cover, obviously, but she's working on several different titles in the course of this chapter.
She's not reading these books. She's writing a reference paper, right? She's writing a thesis. And her thesis is you have to break the seals. And she's referencing all the different books and opening different pages and cross-referencing. And like she's got little tabs in each book is how I'm thinking, so she can flip certain pages and underline certain quotes and all that kind of stuff. Like she is essentially putting together her master thesis, which is you have to break the seals, Rand.
And I would submit that this is why she is hashtag not a fucking lamp.
Right.
Because a lamp is not teaching herself 600 level fucking philosophy and recreating an entire scholar's decades long series of thoughts and works and tracing out everything he may have thought to recreate what's the most likely solution to Rand's question.
I think because so much of it is internal to her that like for externally, it doesn't look like she's doing a lot. She's sitting there reading, which I know is just so highly offensive to those of us who like to sit there and read and are told we're not doing anything.
Yes.
So, yeah, no, it's frustrating because reading is doing something. I saw a funny thing that was like, what happens if we treated people who other forms of entertainment as books? And it's like, oh, are you going to watch that fantasy series? All 80 episodes? You're just going to sit there and binge that TV and not do anything useful? Like, it's like, yeah, that's what reading is it's I'm hallucinating fun stories. Sorry that you need a TV to do that. I can do it with words on a page.
I know, right? Yeah. But it's like she's tabs everywhere, not sleeping very much, like working through multiple hypotheses of like a serious academic scholar, volumes everywhere, and she's keeping track of Rand's sleep and telling him to go back to bed.
And like, she's reading Plato. I'm sorry, Pelteo.
Yeah. She's just literally just casually reading Plato to like come up with her thesis for why Rand should, build a nuclear bomb.
And you remember Plato wrote a book called Musings, and this is a book called Ponderings by Palatos. It's not exactly Mother Teresa levels of that was actually referencing our time, but like, I don't know.
It's better.
This is weird though, because
maybe it's not better. Plato was kind of a dumbass.
Do you think this is actually the book Plato's? Sorry, words again. Do you think this is actually the book Plato's Musings carried forward, or do you think that's just like a play on the title that Sanderson's doing?
I think it's just a play on the title.
Just like another philosopher of that time who's very similar.
Yeah, you're gonna have your Platos and your Aristotles in every turning of the wheel, obviously. Because the Western canon is the most pure form of human expression, and no other kind of part of the world could ever need to be referenced.
Well, this is a very Western coded society, so you could pretend that in this turning of the wheel, things happened a lot in the same way that they happened in ours.
Sure, let's do that. Also, Min is thinking about how she doesn't like the conclusion she's reaching. She thinks that the concept of breaking the seals is going to not go over very well with people who are going to think they know better.
Which it doesn't. And that makes sense.
Rand is on board. She's worried about Rand's opinion first, but everyone after Rand is a problem. Yeah.
And it makes sense. It's like, well, this idea that if the seals break for even an instant, the Dark One will be freed. and there's nothing you can do to stop that. And, like, he does make the point of, like, no, it takes a while for him to get out. It's like a narrow opening and stuff. But, like, or no, sorry, that's not the case. It's just that Rand's holding him in place so that when he does break the seals, he cannot. The seals are broke. That's why it's so important, the light, that you don't break the seals until you see the light. That's part of the last battle is Logan can't break the seals till the light comes out of the tower. Because at that point, Rand has all 3 powers and has seized the Dark One. If the seals are broken before Rand has control of the Dark One would have gotten out.
Right, yeah. There's this baton handoff thing.
And I think that's what everyone else is like, hey, you can't break the seals till you know how you're going to hold the Dark One in place. Because if you break those seals, he's going to get out. And so I think it was important. And that's where she's thinking about there's a missing piece. That's Kalendor, right? That's how he's going to hold the Dark One in place, by using Kalendor to amplify the true power, and then his bond with Moradin. But all the pieces are here in this chapter to how he's going to win the last battle.
Yeah. Yeah, and Min is still only halfway through this master's thesis, PhD dissertation, whatever it is that she's working on. She has other pieces to put together, but this is really her in full scholar mode.
Anyhow, we're talking about Min and her sort of thoughts, and then a lot of her internal stuff is in this chapter. Her relationship with Avienda, they had become a little more comfortable with each other that evening, sharing usquai. But one day did not friends make, and she was definitely uncomfortable about sharing. I think that is a comment on the fact that there was not enough interaction between the two of them earlier on in this series. Like, they needed to be better friends at this point.
Yeah.
And, like, you can see them both with knives, both like to drink. Like, there's clearly a straightforwardness to both of them that they would appreciate. They could be friends, but it hasn't happened yet.
Right. And I do like the acknowledgement that getting drunk together is not the solid basis for permanent lifelong friendships or other relationships. You need more than just getting drunk together.
Oh, that might explain what I've been doing wrong.
Maybe.
I'm just saying, I've had a lot of friendships made through doing drugs together, whether that's alcohol or.
But one time getting drunk together.
No.
I love you, man.
Yeah.
We should be friends.
Yeah.
Like, no.
Yeah.
That isn't. You
Right.
got to do more work than that.
Those are your temporary bar friends, right? Those are the people you make at the bar, and you're like best friends for that night, and then you're like, God, who the fuck did I hang out with last night? And you look at the pictures, like, oh my God.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And she is correctly assessing that is not a solid basis for trusting someone's character and the relationship you're going to have with them moving forward. But yes, no, I mean, you can forge some great friendships with the use of drugs. It just takes a lot of time and care and, like, not just alcohol.
Not just alcohol. Yes, alcohol. So going back to the beginning of this podcast, I tried to force a friendship with alcohol. Okay, anyway.
So we want to revisit Herid Fel's note, or are we past that at this point?
Belief in order gives strength. Have to clear the rubble before you can build. We'll explain when. See you next. Do not bring girl too pretty is the note. It's an old note from Robert Jordan, one of my favorites. And of course, she's figured out that you have to break the seals, right? That's what that means, clearing the rubble.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward, actually. It's one of those things where it's like, did you need a philosophy degree to figure that out? It seems pretty. I mean, like, Perrin is on board immediately when he hears it, because he's like, well, that's a sound blacksmithing principle. So, sure.
Perhaps the books had nothing to do with his death. I don't think they did. I honestly think he was wrong place, wrong time. Just too near Rand. I think I remember speculating that, like, it may have thought he was Asmodean.
Yep, you did. Yeah, that was your speculation, was that the Forsaken were looking for Asmodean and wondering about how Rand was going to, benefit from that, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, that was your hypothesis.
Can't the golem tell channelers from non-channelers?
It can. Yeah.
But only if they're channeling? Or is it...
I'm pretty sure it can just tell in general, but maybe the weave that hides the ability to channel works on them.
Sure.
Because it's not applied to them, it's applied to the subject. So maybe, I'm just saying, maybe the golem was less discriminate and was like, just because I can't tell they can channel doesn't mean I'm not going to kill them. But yeah, I've always wondered about that. That like Min obviously gets critical and important information that does help Rand from this quest. But I've always wondered, like, was she on a wild goose chase and just kind of happened across important information because she was reading the right books to get important information from?
Oh, I think Herid Fel had important information. I just don't think he was killed because of this information.
Right. The thing that she's looking for, right? She's trying to put together a very specific, like, this is why he was killed. And, like, does that even exist?
Yeah.
Is she actually chasing a figment of her imagination and the side quests are actually what needed to happen? You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's not that I don't think the Dark One wanted to kill Herid Fel. I just don't think he would have had any idea who he was. Like, there was no one to... I think we speculated that whoever had control of the golems wouldn't have known to send it after Herid Fel.
Right, because this note doesn't exist anywhere except in Rand and Min's heads.
Right. And so it's like, and no one else was around to read it. Like, so I'm just like, either Herid Fel was in wrong place, wrong time, or, you know, they thought he was somebody else.
Or there was just a general sense that Rand cannot have a good aligned philosopher on his team.
I guess.
Like, maybe it was just a matter of like, oh, if we have a philosopher who's not a nihilist, then like he's going to figure stuff out, like a really wide kind of net. But yeah, Rand has so few of his advisors get assassinated that doesn't feel like it holds water.
No, exactly. Yeah, it's such a weird moment that feels very... Why Herid Fel? And they bring it up, and he brings it up repeatedly. Why Herid Fel? Why Herid Fel? And it's like he's rubbing that question in your face. And it's like, I have to speculate on something, right? Like, I have to come up with something outlandish. So
Light-Planted Fool is saying that maybe Samael just was keeping like eyes and ears on like Fel's organization and like their general fields of study.
I just feel like anything you pick is going to be a stretch, right? Like, there's nothing that's like, aha, that makes sense more than the other options.
Okay, maybe Herid Fel insulted the Golem's mother when they were both in kindergarten together, and he just never could let it go.
I didn't know Herid Fel was that old, but okay.
That's the part of my story you're going to pick apart.
Not the golems were never children or have mothers
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I wish that there was something more conclusive for something that is so pivotal in Min and Rand's metaphysical, like, how to defeat the Dark One journey. It feels like this critical turning point should be less ambiguous to us after all these rereads.
Right. Like, was the Dark One trying to hide this, or was it just like Taviranness? Or I feel like this is one of those things where I'm like, it just feels like Jordan wanted to introduce it, but then realized he needed to delay it, so he just killed off the character. But he was also, I think he was also giving Min a quest, right? Like, I think he was trying to give Min something here. Like, I think this was, and I think that's what's frustrating to me is like, it's such an important part of Min's character arc that the start of it to be so ambiguous.
Did he realize he wrote a sexy lamp and then like try to put a patch in to like?
I think so. I think maybe.
I don't like that. I agree, but I don't like that.
I mean, feels like when Harriet said, like, why do you have a fourth boy? What is he doing? He doesn't have a purpose. Cut him. And she said the same thing about Min. What are you doing? She's not doing anything there. Give her a purpose. And he's like, fine, I'll give her Herid Fel's job. I'll kill him and give her the books.
Herid Fel died to fix a man's accidental misogyny in his writing. That's what Herid Fel died for. Terrible. That's terrible. Herid Fel did nothing wrong.
But he danced with those women at that party, and they were much younger than him. And there were multiple of them.
He also did say that Min was distractingly sexy. Mm-hmm. Cancel Herid Fel. He did everything wrong.
That's what we're doing in this episode. We're canceling people.
Moving on from Herid Fel's mysterious murder. Min thinks about how it doesn't matter if half the fandom thinks she's a sexy lamp as long as she did something useful.
Yeah.
Which I appreciate. And then Rand wakes up and she's like, God damn it, go back to sleep. He's like, no.
And he wakes up and goes, oh, he's back, though there's a voice in my head. So we know Louis Theron's back in his head because he's back in his own body.
Right. And Min does the thing where she absolutely doesn't want to hear about Rand's mental illness, but then also asks for information about Rand's mental illness. And it's like, Min, you need to decide that you're on board with the fact that he's mentally ill. Stop lying. Just get on board.
Yeah, you're totally sane. I'm not insane. It's the voice in my head that's insane. Okay. And sometimes he does stuff and channels and uses magic. Sometimes I give him the big guns that I have in my possession. Terrifying. Absolutely fucking terrifying, Rand.
Yeah, that would be upsetting.
Yeah, it would be very upsetting. The fact that Min doesn't run screaming at that moment is kind of insane.
Or extremely sane.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's it's a lot. It's asking of her a lot to be like, yes, I let the madman in my head drive the car sometimes when you're in it. She's like, really?
Really?
That's comforting.
Yeah. But he's a really good driver. He's way better than I am.
She's like, so that explains where all the speeding tickets have been coming from.
Here's a line I don't like. There are things going on in there behind those Aiel eyes of yours, Rand. I don't like her calling them Aiel eyes.
Yeah.
It's an insult. It feels like an insult. It feels like a slur. You're black-eyed Aiel.
Yeah, she's like, you're so exotic and mysterious. Like, I can't read your face because you're different. Yeah. Doesn't seem necessary.
And it doesn't seem Min-like. Like, anyone else saying your Aiel eyes? Sure. Like, Codswain saying that? Totally. Min? She sees Rand's eyes, not Aiel eyes.
Yeah, it really doesn't feel like a thing she would say. It feels like a Sanderson fumble. Just don't quite like that. I do like the part where Rand is like, I can't tell you what's going on with me because you'll be scared. And she's like, what? So I'm a fragile flower? I do like that retort. It's just like your level of protective.
He's like, no, you're a fragile lamp. God.
I know, right? Like I do like that we're getting some airtime on the like stop putting women on pedestals for a goddamn minute. Like
you'll think I'm mad. I already think you're a wool-headed fool.
It's so cute. They're flirting. But having a very serious conversation. And
so he basically says, yeah, I do have a voice in my head and all that kind of stuff. We talked about that already. No, Min, he's insane. I'm not.
Min's like, is that how it is for all of them? Uh-huh. They insist that they're not the insane ones. And it's like, it does seem to be a theme with people who hear voices, particularly in this world.
But that's not how they all go insane. Except in the TV show, it appears that's all they did just make everybody go insane in the same way.
Yes, all two of them.
Yes, well, but implied that everybody, it's like, that happens to all of them. Because he's like, Rand, is this what happened to you? Because this is what happens to everybody I've talked to who has the power. And it just gets worse, and there's a clear progression.
Oh, it's a lot simpler than 1,000 different ways that your brain could fracture.
Right.
For purposes of storytelling.
They did reduce the options in the that's the kindest way I'll put it. They've reduced the possible options in which they can go in the TV show.
Yep. So then Rand breaks containment on the information about Balefire. So that's good. That information is now getting out of the dark circles in the dreams. It is now getting to like regular people on the light side that Balefire will work. Again,
very weird that Ashamael let that one slip, that Moradin let that one slip, right? You think he would hold on to that? It feels like a oversight of someone who's distracted and wasn't expecting Rand to be in his... But it's like, man, that is a huge tool. That's a very powerful tool to know that that's the only way they cannot resurrect is with Balefire. Well, that or the Shadow Logoth, but that's gone now.
Yeah, he kind of neutralized that one.
Yeah, that's a big hole in the ground. And then we get the line how, in a way, the Dark One's own taint will destroy him, for it is what gave me access to Louis Theron, which is what gives him, the planning of the last sealing and the ability to overcome the mistakes he made and like all that kind of stuff. And this is where I think this is my prime example of how Brandon Sanderson really loves to point out the obvious in text, right? In a way, the Dark One's taint will destroy him, for it's what gave me access to Louis Theron. I would love to have seen that happen, not be told that's how it's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely getting into the spelling it out ad nauseum part of the metaphysics.
Mm-hmm. Which, I appreciate on some level that Sanderson kind of had to do that to end the series in a satisfying way, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah. But it's also one of his flaws as a writer is that he likes it too much.
Yes. And it's why I do like that he ended these books, because in a lot of ways, we don't have to have arguments with people after the series is over about whether Rand was insane or not the whole time, right? He spells it out.
Right. Yeah, for sure. For sure. We did kind of need that to leaven out Robert Jordan's leave it as an exercise for the reader style writing.
Yeah, the Lion of the Tiger part of Robert Jordan's writing, which is
right.
the Lady
right.
of the Tiger, sorry.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, totally.
Not the Lion of the Tiger.
I was like, am I misunderstanding that?
Sorry, the Lady and the
okay.
Tiger. That's a reference to a short story that we had to read in middle school.
Wait, maybe I'm not understanding the reference.
It's the guy is in oh gosh. So I don't remember the entire setup for it, but essentially he's sleeping with a princess, gets caught, thrown in jail, and he gets put in the arena. And the way the arena works is there's two doors. Behind one is a beautiful lady that you get to go home with, and the other one is a lion who will eat you alive. And his lady love, the princess, knows what's behind each door because she's up in the tower, and she can see what's behind each door. And so he looks up at her and beseeches her to give him, the answer. And she points him at a door, and he goes and he opens the door, and the story ends. And so it's the idea that you never get to know whether he is eaten, whether the woman he loves would rather have him be eaten by a tiger or go home with another woman and survive. And
wow,
you don't get to know. So
I never came across that story. That's intense.
Right. Yeah. And that's sort of the Lady of the Tiger is my way of referencing oh, he's not going to tell you the ending of the story. It's left to the reader to decide.
Right. Right.
And in a lot of ways, it is a reflection back on the reader and back on you. What do you think the woman would point him at?
Right.
Which door
right,
do you think she would, tell him to go? Your interpretation tells a lot more about you, and that's good storytelling in a way. But overuse of it means you're just coming up with plot lines that never end. So,
right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Then you're just watching Lost, right? That's
yeah, bit of both. So, yeah, that's a good way of contrasting them. So yeah, Rand and Min are talking about things, and then Min gets a big blast of visions about him, but none of it's interesting. It's just there for Brandon Sanderson to say, "Look, I did visions. It's nice."
Okay. Oh my God, he says fireflies consumed in darkness. Great reference to the beginning, but give us some sort of she always said they're either being consumed faster than they're being created, or you're keeping up. Now would be a great, give us some idea of how fast they're being consumed. That's an important marker. It would mean something if you didn't just say they existed, but that they were, I guess he's saying they're being consumed completely. Is that because Rand's in his deep, deep, deep anger?
I think so. Yeah, because he's Darthing out.
I think that's what, and it's just he's Darthing out. So I guess that's what I'm taking from that is his darkness, and nobody else is around him, and so he's just wiping out the fireflies immediately.
Yeah.
Again, not really of the future, of now. And then 3 women before a pyre. We've seen that many times before, right? We know that's Min, Avienda, and Elaine at Rand's, Moradin's death, actually.
Yeah.
Flashes of light, darkness, shadow, signs of death. Oh my God, signs of death. How? Yeah. Crowns, injuries, pain, and hope. It's just
Thank you, Brandon.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. That doesn't
tempest around Randall 4. We've never heard that before.
A storm is coming. A storm is coming. Okay. Sorry. The dramaticism.
Yeah, Min ends this section feeling like Rand has opened up to her a little bit, and there's a little bit of softness and a little bit of openness, tiny bit. And she's like, "Oh, it's a beginning. I can work on him. I can still fix him." And we know that Summerog is going to very much shut that door very firmly.
Right,
shortly.
right, very soon.
Very soon. And with that, we shift to his other lady love, Avienda,
who's punishing herself.
She really is. She's doing a really dumb punishment where she's moving a candle flame back and forth across the yard at night. And in the course of having a conversation with the wise one, as per usual, they get to actually talk to some other Aiel about a real problem, which is cool. But then the wise one is like, you still aren't learning fast enough. And I think that means that the next time we see her doing her punishments, It's going to be the last time, I'm pretty sure.
I think so. I struggled to find anything to say about this segment. Like I had a couple of highlights about this happens, then that happens, but you summed it up pretty well, and I don't have much commentary on it. Do you have anything to say?
Well, I think that it's interesting how they handle the news that these newcomers bring, right? So what happens is Avienda is talking to Amis, and Amis is trying to like hint at Avienda what she needs to do. And then Dahmer Flynn, Davram Bashir, and a guard of Saldeans and Aiel come into camp having negotiated a second meeting with the Shanshan. And one of the maidens, Korana, comes over to report on this and also brings the news about the captured Shido Wise Ones from Perrin's attack on Malden. And the way that this information lands with the Aiel, I mean, this is the very first time that any decision makers among the Aiel are getting to hear about it, right? This is a maiden bringing the intel back. And Avienda and Amis have to react to it. And their argument is basically that is going to need to be first thing after we defeat evil. Like they literally say we're going to have to make peace with the Shanshan, despite the fact that they have Aiel Wise Ones as Damane. We're literally going to have to table that until after the existential fight with literal evil. That is their takeaway. And I'm not totally sure how I feel about that call. You know?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's necessary. I feel like the last battle is happening. It's happening soon. This is sort of where you have to say, like, I can't do anything in the next couple of weeks. So I can't change the society in a couple of weeks. I'm going to go fight the last battle, and then we can worry about it. I understand the practicality of it. I understand that you want it to, like, we don't want to work with the Shanshan. We want to draw a hard line. These are bad people. They have slaves. They've taken our people slaves. But they're just Shido. Mostly. Which aren't really their people anymore.
The argument has been made repeatedly that the Shido may have lost the Aiel way. They've lost their Jiato.
I firmly believe, in the same way that the Tinkers aren't Aiel anymore, right? The way the 13th clan, the Gen Aiel, aren't really Aiel anymore. There's Gen and there's Aiel and there's enemies, right? Like,
right.
They're different. And in a lot of ways, the Shido are Shido. They're not Aiel anymore. You talk like a Shido.
Right. They're speciating in a cultural sense.
Yeah, absolutely. They're breaking off, they're swarming, and like they've really become this separate, they're infected with the idea of Couladin.
Cordycepsidin.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know that I like the Aiel saying, well, they don't have the same level of honor as us, so they don't deserve the same human rights as us. I don't know if I like that line of reasoning.
Yeah, but there's a certain amount of like risk when going after.
No, for sure. I mean, it is a triage of timing, because literally the last battle is a few weeks away, and like that's organizing a campaign to deal with the problem would probably take all the remaining time we have between now and the last battle. That's very real. Because I get it. It makes sense, but I just like, ooh.
I mean, if you really think back to the doldrums of this book series, right? The part of the book that we all talk about as the slog that was really slow. What were they trying to do? They were trying to drive. Why was the plot not advancing? Because we were stuck on trying to drive the Shanshan off the continent, right? That's what Rand is doing. That's what, a lot of these characters are driving at. That's what fucking Malden's all about, right? Like, well, kind of. But I did that thing where I was talking so much I lost my original point. We were just talking about that at the beginning of the episode. But yeah, it's frustrating. The Shanshan problem is something that we kind of had to move beyond to fight the last battle. And it never really got solved satisfactorily. And both, I think, Sanderson as an author and us as readers and the people in world have had to say, okay, this has to be a problem for after the last battle.
Yep. And that's how the wise ones, Amis and Avienda, agree on it. And then Amis looks at the wise one, Avienda, and says, get your shit together. We need you to fight the last battle. And then the chapter ends. Because Avienda's still acting like an apprentice.
Yeah. Do you want to read us out? Just like a couple paragraphs?
Yeah, sure. There'll be dangerous words of this among the spears, Ami said thoughtfully. There will be calls to attack, demands that the Karakarn give up his attempts to make peace. Will he stay with them when he refuses? Avienda asked. Of course they will, Ami said. They're Aiel. She glanced at Avienda. We haven't much time, child. Perhaps it is time to stop coddling you. I will think up better punishments for you starting tomorrow. Coddling me? Avienda watched Ami stalk away. They couldn't possibly come up with anything more useless or demeaning. But she'd learned long ago not to underestimate Amis. With a sigh, Avienda broke into a trot, heading back toward her tent. Moving into the next chapter.
We're going right into it. All right. We're going to try and hit every major character except Matt today.
Basically, yeah.
There's a couple of POV switches. We're hitting Egwene. No Matt, no Elaine. But we're going to hit Egwene, Avienda, Min, Rand, Perrin.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of POVs for not a lot of plot.
Not a lot of plot. But each one gets one little advancement, right? Everyone gets to move forward one square on their progression towards the last battle.
And I shouldn't say it's not very much plot. It's a lot of plot. It's just much more action scene than podcast content plot.
Yeah, so we are now in the White Tower. That's the chapter, in the White Tower, and the symbol is the Flame of Tarvalin, because we are in the White Tower.
And kind of the read-in for this sort of feels like a thought continuation from the last chapter, right? Because we've got Avienda being interviewed for her opinions on what's happening with Rand. And then we roll right into a conversation with Egwene and some sitters talking about how to handle Rand. And it's a test of Egwene's leadership chops, basically.
And that's what she's been going around being tested and training with all these different Aes Sedai, and this has been going on for like a month, right? And so she's been cultivating these relationships and answering these questions and basically acting like an Amyrlin in private to these people, one-on-one.
Exactly. And this is the last meeting she has before it gets taken away as a mechanism.
Mm-hmm. Before things escalate / accumulate? No, accumulate. No. Accumulate. No.
Climax?
No.
Culminate.
Yes. Culminate.
There we go.
Thank you.
There we go. Culminate. Yeah, and I don't even know what to read in for this, so I'll just say, yeah, it's a transition of the same kind of vibe. We've got 3 whites sitting in wicker chairs at a low table, and Egwene sitting in front of them with her back to the window, cracking nuts for these whites as they talk. And it's been almost an hour before they actually turn to her with anything of interest. And I kind of tracked the nut cracking process, because she does at one point set the nutcracker aside. It's kind of transitions to being just the Amyrlin. She doesn't continue cracking nuts as the conversation gets really deep.
That's good. You read much more into this than I did.
I'm trying, man.
I had again, same thing where this part of the chapter, the beginning of the chapter before the meeting, I was just like, she's being smart and giving advice.
Well, but this is more important than giving advice. That was all preamble. This is where they actually ask her, how would you handle the Dragon Reborn, right? This is the final test. This isn't the pop quiz. This is the actual final test. Well, that's all that matters in this chapter. Right?
I totally agree with you. I had nothing highlighted before that. I had a lot of, and I don't really. Is there anything important about these Aes Sedai? Nothing that I found.
I trusted you to do the homework on that, because all I remember is that Miyasi has a thing about only eating whole half walnuts. Of these 3 whites, that's the only thing I remember, is that Miyasi has a thing about not eating partial walnut pieces. I don't think that there's anything else interesting about them. I guess they're sitters, but...
Miyasi is a black.
Oh! Well, that's interesting. Darkfriend alert.
Darkfriend alert.
So the slightly neurotic one is also evil. That's good to know.
Mm-hmm. Nothing about Thiessen. Who's the third?
Faraine.
Faraine. She used to be a sitter. Becomes a sitter again. She is essentially one of the sitters for the rest of the series of the tower. But other than that, she's in that group, right? But not
Okay, so she's an older, respected sitter who retains her seat through the re-merge. Okay, yeah, so yeah, not a lot of interest here, but what's important is that, Egwene gets to lay out how she is different from Elida, right? This is the really important campaign question, is how are you different from your opponent? And we know how Elida has handled the situation. Well, what would you have done differently? And Egwene says, very generic things. And there's like, oh, did you mean me personally? I thought it was a hypothetical. Right, she's playing all coy with them. It's really funny. But then, she basically says you gather intelligence however you can, and then you do your best to be influential rather than arrogant and trying to slap your name on everything just for shits and giggles. And the Aes Sedai are like, that is a profound departure from normal Tower policy. Actually, she's like, no, it's not. Historically speaking, y'all are subtle as hell. Like, why did you have to become brash and ridiculous at the last minute when the final test is coming? Like, Elida's so out of character for the Tower in this moment of crisis.
Right. Yeah. I got to think that's the Dark One's influence somehow. The breaking of the Tower and the brashness.
It's Fane as much as the Dark One.
Well, yeah, there is that. Yeah.
Like, Fane really put a number on Elida specifically as a person.
Mm-hmm.
And then the part where Podden Fane is also was a Darkfriend before he became Mordeth and did Darkfriend things as well as Mordeth things.
I also really love the part where Egwene's like, if Rand changed, I'd have to deal with that, and but I clearly am the same person exactly. It's just like that's the kind of stuff that makes drives me nuts about Egwene, is just how much she's like, I'm the exact same person. None of this has changed me at all. Egwene, you have gone through so much shit. You are barely resemble the girl who is left, and you certainly don't treat Rand as the same person ever.
Yeah, in this way, she is kind of a perfect pair for Gawain, because she has the inverse opinion of Gawain. Right, Gawain's like, Rand al'Thor has changed completely into a monster. Egwene's like, Rand al'Thor couldn't have changed in the slightest.
Right.
They're just equal opposite levels of no. Rand al'Thor is a person who's having a journey just like everyone else. But no, we have to have absolute opinions about how other people are versus ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and gosh, we really don't know how much influence Messana had on Elida, right? She was clearly running the Alviaran's influence, right? Like a puppet. But what else was she doing in the Tower? She wasn't just messing with Alviaran.
Right, we never hear about anything that Danelle got up to, aside from, stuff to do with the coup. But one assumes that she was able to do all kinds of weird things to help keep things shenanigans high.
I wonder if that's why the wards are breaking down in the Tower. I wonder if it has nothing to do with the Dark One, but what if Danelle's just going around breaking White Tower wards, and that's why the rats and stuff can get in. And they're like, oh, it's a sign of the Dark One. And it's like, yeah, kinda, but not the way you think it is.
I kind of love that idea that, the power is failing in some regards. Some of the keepings are not working. These tried and true weaves are dying. But yeah, wouldn't it be funny if some of it was just Messana coming along and just untying the magical knots that kept the thing in place? That it's such a simpler explanation. I love it.
Well, and anytime I can prove the character's wrong, it's fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But what else would she be doing, right?
I also do though, that Egwene is this conversation isn't really about Rand. It's about me. And it's not even really about me. It's about me versus Elida, right? She's really good at cutting to the heart of the conversation as it's actually happening, not the superficial layer, which, as autistic people, I think we admire that skill. Because, what? I would be like, well, literally, Rand likes to brush his hair with a certain kind of, I'd be all off in the wrong details, And
I love her also, well, what would you do if you were in Elida's situation? Be like, I wouldn't be in Elida's situation. I'm not Elida. Right. I wouldn't have done the dumb shit she did. Why would I, Right. Yeah. Which I feel that so often when someone's people throw hypotheticals at me when they're like, well, what would you do if you were downtown trying to buy a large amount of drugs with a gun in your pocket? And I'm like, in what? There's so many things that in my life that would have to change for that even being a remote possibility that I would be a totally different person and would answer the question totally differently.
Right.
I'm not the person in that hypothetical. I don't know what I would do. Sorry.
Right. And Yeah, that's very the tower to be like, well, people can just be slotted in and out of these stereotypes because we're the academics and we know what's best. And Egwene has to be like, first of all, the Aiel are not subjugated. Second of all, Randall Thor is like a river, right? She's got all these very great concepts, and she's like, okay, picking up what I'm putting down? Rand is like a river. You need to like work with the force of the river, not against it. Like, is this ringing a bell at all?
Randall Thor, like.
I was thinking more of like it's an analogy to Sidar, but. And then she also thinks about how the whites have maybe a bit of a rigid approach to people. People are much more complex than a set of rules or numbers. There's a time for logic, but there's also a time for emotion. Again, proving that she is a good Amerlin candidate.
And I would send a gray with a, blue and a green because he likes blues and greens, but led by a gray because they're supposed to be negotiating, not fighting. And like you'd keep the reds really far away from them. And all, yeah, all the common sense shit that we've said of like, where are the grays in all of this negotiating and situation? Like, what are they doing? Nothing effective.
Right. And she points out, dealing with is different from working with. These are very different approaches. You can't just throw reds at the problem like he's another random rabid man in the interval between the breaking and the last battle.
And that comes up with Elida later when she's like, what would you have done with him if you captured him? You'd have stuck him in a hole and he couldn't fulfill any prophecies? Like, that's dealing with. You need to work with this man.
Yeah, exactly. So it's, it's a good interview. And then they're like, well, but, and she's like, how about we fix our own house first? Maybe we fix the tower. Maybe the tower needs to be fixed before we can like work on hypotheticals about Randall Thor, maybe possibly. And then the whites just do the most ridiculous, like Darvo, right? They're like, well, we didn't cause it. It's not our responsibility to fix it. And it's like, everyone caused it and everyone needs to fix it. It's not that hard.
No, it's the people with emotions that are the problem. We're logical. We don't have emotions.
Oh my god. Like will nobody accept accountability, right? I mean, again, like parallels to modern society. Like, will nobody accept fucking accountability for the patch of floor around them? Please.
Yeah, we have a terrible leader in place, and you people have the power to do something about it, and you're just sitting there on your thumbs doing absolutely nothing while he dismantles our goddamn democracy, and you have no desire to change the enmeshed power structure that is allowing you to hold on to what you have long after you should have fucking retired, you geriatric pieces of shit. And yet you continue to profit. Stupid sitters.
Yep. Definitely sitters, not senators.
Yeah.
Definitely the sitters. Yeah. Yeah. People need to take responsibility for being part of the system that they are part of. And the system is designed to create the outcomes that it creates. So do the math. Take some responsibility. Sitters.
Yeah. God, the fact that Trump is just gotten reelected after, I mean, we've now been doing this podcast long enough, right? Through his entire first presidency, through Biden's presidency, and now we're back. And the parallels that we made between Trump and Elida were so strong back in the day. And the fact that we are here at this point in this book series, when he is reelected, when it is just all about how awful leadership can divide something in such a way that it cannot be reunited unless you remove that leadership, and the people in power need to do something about it. It's just...
You want to battle the Dark One, your first step is not to deal with existential crises. Your first step should be to reach out to each other.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, it's so appropriate. It's so highly appropriate in a way that
It's upsetting.
I have emotions. I think a lot of people do.
Yeah. So Egwene continues to dress down the whites. They eventually are like, all right, we get it. We gotta participate. And Egwene's like, yes, progress. Fantastic. And she leaves and runs right into Katarine, Darkfriend alert, who's like, I have taken away all of your free roaming privileges. That excitement that you just felt, instantly going to take that away. Not for you. not anymore. You're making progress. We're putting the kibosh on that.
I do have one more thing to say. when Egwene is talking about how bad Alviarin fucked up and blames it on the whites and says your Aja messed it up, Miasi, the Darkfriend, is the one who recoils and gets all offended. Because it's not just her white Aja, it's also her dark Aja. So anyway, that was a fun little bit that I think I missed the first time because I didn't realize she was black.
I didn't notice that. That's a good catch. Oh yeah, they also Egwene blows the lid on the thing about Aes Sedai getting bonded by Ashaman. That's apparently a consternation moment in the conversation, but I didn't think it was interesting, so I didn't mention it.
She talks about hoping the Browns run across the story of Renala Merlone. Looked everywhere. There's nothing more about it other than it appears to be some story about a Brown who was in a similar situation. But this is the only reference to it in the series. So
I love that kind of world building. You do all the work. The author does none of the work. They're like, nah, there's a story by this person who the parallels should be obvious. Anyway, moving on. Like I love that kind of world building. It's so airy.
It's like making up a word and using it in context and then just never using it again and being like, yeah, you know what that word was. You know it.
Yeah. I had it, someone pointed it out to me years ago with respect to some of the world building in Star Wars, ironically. That's part of why the world building of Star Wars in the original trilogy is like so good, is because there's a lot of unexplained terminology and references that just never get explained ever, and that's what makes the world so rich and engaging for people. And ever since that insight's been pointed out to me, I've noticed a lot of stories do it, and it's always very effective when they do. Like it's amazing. It's like whipped egg whites. There's nothing there, and yet it makes such a big difference. It's just air. It's so great.
Well, and for me, it's really important in storytelling to have enough details in there that when you have a detail that's important to the story, you're not putting it up on the wall and saying this is Chekhov's gun. You know, like there's got to be enough detail in the story that this little bit doesn't seem relevant until later when you can be like, oh, that's what that meant. I lost it in all the other little details. And if you don't have all those little meaningless details, you can't slip in meaningful details without it looking like a giant sticker on your forehead, right? Like, so that's kind of why I love Robert Jordan's really descriptive writing, because on every reread we're finding sentences, and we're on this podcast journey, we're finding little sentences and words that we may have missed. They're like, oh, that's what that meant. I missed it in this descriptive writing. I missed it in the forest, right? Like, that's what gives this series rereadability.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's one of the reasons why I think I don't like Sanderson's stuff as much, because every detail means something, and he gets his volume through repetition.
Right. Yeah.
And so he's hammering points in over and over and over again, as opposed to slipping them into all the details.
Yeah, it just chews different.
Yeah.
So yeah, Egwene gets told that her life is going to be 15 hours of manual labor every day until she does whatever it is Elida wants. And Egwene thinks about it and realizes that that's a problem, but she's going to have to stay the course. It really sucks for her accessibility to other sisters, but she can't budge an inch because that will not work for her campaign.
Basically, once Elida has an effective tool to punish her into getting her to do what she wants, she no longer is an independent person. Then she just becomes subjugated to Elida's will, and then she's lost.
Yep.
So this can't become an effective thing. So she goes in and scrubs, and we get a little cute Laras scene where Laras tries to sneak her out.
Laras is so cool. Her backstory is another one of those things that just the less said, the more we speculate, and the wilder it gets.
Well, it's just like she talks about being a pretty young thing. She talks about getting in trouble.
Near to hanging a time or two.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Jesus. I think she has a connection to the kin.
Oh, definitely. She has to.
Right?
She has to.
When certain novices or accepted are no longer making it in the White Tower, and they want to run away, and they're being punished, or Laras feels that it's not fair for them, she has been sneaking them out and connecting them with the kin, and the kin have been getting them out.
Agreed.
And I think
Fully
the
agreed.
only effective way to run away from the White Tower is with Laras' help. I think the only ones that have ever actually made it.
Yeah. My only point of speculation left in that canon is why? What is the inciting incident that brings her to the tower and makes her decide that this is her life's mission? There's just so much, like, that's a powerful mission she's assigned herself. Why? She did not do that on a whim. Why? It's so juicy. But yeah, it's a good scene. Laras sneaks up, super sneaky, and is like, here is my well-oiled sneaking girls out machine.
Right. And we have to mention, of course, she did it with Min and the old Amerlin.
Yeah,
Leanna
Swan
and Swan. Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
she snuck all three of them out.
And those she only got out of the tower. She's offering to get Egwene all the way to the river.
Well, there was a rebellion going on then, so it's a little bit harder when there's that.
Sure. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
totally, for sure.
Yeah, there's no battle going on. Well, I guess there is a
Not
they're
in the
being
same
besieged.
way.
Yeah, but
The
not in
Hitler
same
youth
way.
is not running around murdering their teachers.
The compelled Hitler youth.
Yes. And then Egwene thinks seriously about taking the offer because it doesn't count as being whisked away by her army.
Mm-hmm.
But she makes the decision that she can still be more effective inside the tower than outside and turns it down. And Laras presumably gains a great measure of respect for her and then, takes off her spy disguise and goes walking back into the kitchen all loud and brushing against stuff. And you're just like, Laras has so many secret skills. It's so cool.
So I'm thinking, 20 years ago, I'm thinking something during the Aiel War was going on, right? Like, that's probably the time when she was a young girl who was doing all of these things.
Is she mentioned in New Spring?
I don't know. I do not think so. Let me go double check, but...
Because that would be an important piece of data to pinning down her timeline, as if she's mentioned anywhere in New Spring.
She is. New Spring, Chapter 6. When Moraine and Suan dawdle over breakfast, Laras frowns at them until they leave.
So she's already a cook at that point.
During the Aiel War, she is plump and more than pretty, short of her middle years.
Oh.
So this is probably right after all of that, because she's plump and more than pretty, short of her middle years. So she's starting to get plumpish, right? Not a slim little thing that she talks about.
Well, and she's clearly got authority in the kitchen, so she's been working her way up the ranks for probably a couple of years. Her wild past has to be slightly in the rear view.
Sure.
At
okay,
that
yeah.
point.
Yeah, so
But
probably
yeah.
more like 30 years ago, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm thinking if she was into wild shenanigans, like, say, between the ages of 15 and 25, right, by the time she's 30, she's, like, settled down into the White Tower. And then the books start, and she's already, like, established there, like, in her mid-30s, like, coming up on 40. By the time that these books are happening, she's, like, in her 60s, graying hair, like,
Right,
fully
or like late
established.
50s, yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, whatever happened in her life to assign her to the tower happens entirely before even the prequel. Her entire story starts years before the prequel, probably before Moraine and Swan even show up to the tower.
But yet, there must be Aes Sedai who are still alive from that time, who are around, right? Like, so...
Well, one assumes she didn't get up to that trouble in Tarvalon. One assumes that was in a different country entirely, and she came to Tarvalon to start over.
Ooh, that I did not assume that. I assumed it was in Tarvalon, and she somehow ended up in the tower because of that trouble.
I don't know. I mean, why is she in the tower as a non-channeler? Why is she so invested in the fate of the channeling girls if she's not a channeler? I kind of have always thought that, like, maybe
She was stilled?
this was how she handled, but burned out. I kind of thought maybe this was how she handled being burned out.
Burned out, yeah.
Like, maybe she got a tiny taste early in life, burned out as part of training, and then this was how she clung to life, was to be part of the infrastructure that made channelers happen, and also the infrastructure that got women out.
I just feel like the Aes Sedai would be so much more uncomfortable around her.
Which maybe thinks maybe it, like, was her sister who, like, wanted to get out and ended up, like, dying in training instead because she didn't have a way to get out. So then Laras decides to, like, ninja sneak in and get girls out for the next 50 years in retribution. Like, there's a backstory there. There's an inciting incident that motivated her to do this. She didn't just stumble into it randomly. I can't believe that. But yeah, you're right. If she had been burned out, then they wouldn't have wanted to deal with her. Maybe she went away for a few years and then came back and they didn't recognize her because, reasons.
Yeah, I'm thinking something had to get her involved with the kin.
Right. Why? And it's her or a female relative, right?
She would have been really good as Masana.
She would have been a good cover, but then Masana would have had to do chores, and we agreed last recording that that's what would have broken Semirog better.
No, Laras never did chores. She just had the spoon that she directed. Remember that one time she like stirred and it was dirty?
She had to work her way up the ranks. You don't just come in as head chef with no experience.
Well, and that's right. She's been around long enough that she couldn't have been. She hasn't been around for like 2 years, right? That would have been the key.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Light-blinded fool. That's excellent. Laras, fan art of Laras standing there with the spoon and the stance and captioned, "I'm getting too old for this shit." That's awesome.
But also, like, she's probably also punished a lot of living Aes Sedai, right? Considering that's where most novices get sent for punishment. And she's been there for 30 years.
Yeah, she's like another mistress of novices in that regard. I mean, she doesn't beat them in quite the same way, but...
And probably been there longer than any existing mistress of novices. Like, I don't know how long Shiriam was mistress of novices, right? But I don't think it was for 30 years.
I think it changes with each new administration.
Yeah. So...
Oh, I like Samba Nasai's headcanon. This is Satala Ann's promiscuous sister. Why not tie the headcanon to Satala Ann?
Sure. Except I think Satala Nan is actually quite a bit older because didn't she slow for a while?
Oh, yeah, very different, maybe big, massive age gap.
So yeah, no, I mean, Laras has been sort of a fixture of the tower for a very long time.
Yeah, Laras is like part of the institution, which I guess makes her part of the problem. But like, she's one of the best parts of the institution because she does have the Underground Railroad escape hatch.
Yeah, no, I would make her keeper. Like,
Yeah.
I know she can't channel. Fine. Make her keeper.
Who cares?
All right, so enough about Laras. Let's go back to the tower.
Yeah, so Egwene does exactly half a day of work and then is immediately summoned to serve Elaida. They literally think that one afternoon of this new regime is going to break her spirit. It's very silly.
Oh, sorry, one more thing about Laras. She can move softer on her feet than you would think. Clearly Forsaken in disguise. Large woman moving softly on her feet, not making noise. Land fear, right? Demandred, and now Masana. All three of them.
Rejected.
Damn it.
Not letting you have the trifecta.
Well, I'm now headcanoning. Masana was actually
Larasana?
Laras, yeah. Larasana.
Masana? Messass? I don't know. I don't know how to portmanteau this.
Larasana, I think, works pretty well.
Yeah, Larasana. It's a cool sounding name, actually.
Yeah.
Maybe if I ever write a fiction book, I'll use that as a character name.
As someone who's evil but also loves to cook.
Basically, yeah, it would have to be. Evil cook. But
Yeah.
like not with the food. Evil with other things. The food is actually good.
Right.
Not a poisoner. Just an Epicurean who does evil things. No. Don't
Laras is
encourage
actually
him, my
banned.
blinded fool. No.
I don't know. I've never seen them in the same room at the same time. It's entirely possible with gateways.
No, it's not.
I'm sorry. That's just, you broke me a little bit there.
Continuing with the plot of the book.
The plot. So she is summoned to the, after a day of scrubbing and escaping and then not escaping, she's summoned to the Amerlin seat, told to go scrub up because she's filthy. And she takes a nice long bath.
This one is actually very justified, unlike Elaine's endless baths. I'm sorry, Elaine. You didn't deserve that. And she thinks about how she's going to deal with Elaida. And she figures silence, just like last time. But when she gets there, it turns out...
It's not just the Amerlin.
This is more like a massive performance, jury presentation. propaganda event.
In front of everybody she's been trying to influence.
Yeah, this is a showdown. This is a big showdown. How this shakes out determines how their war goes forward. And silence will not work. Egwene realizes eventually that silence is in fact not going to cut it. She has to back up all her big talk with these women individually with a public performance. And boy, does she rise to the occasion.
Yeah, this is the part of Sanderson that I love. These moments that are just really exciting and gratifying when he takes all of the edging that Jordan has done over the last 11 books and just smacks you in the face with a really satisfying outcome.
It's so good. It's so satisfying. It's so, like, he brings together all the characters. He brings together all the tension. He brings together the setting. Like, and then he just action scene. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I think it starts, I don't know, I just want to read chunks of it, you know? Like, I don't really feel like there's a lot of analysis because it's just Egwene insulting Elida for being a terrible, terrible leader.
It's so good. Do you want to read it? You want to just tear into Elida?
There's so much. Oh my God. The dinner wasn't about working with the Ajahs. It was about bullying sisters into doing as Elida felt they should. And Egwene was simply there to be shown off. This was all about proving to the others how much power Elida had. She could take someone that others had named Amyrlin, put her in a novice dress, and send her to penance every day. So it's just, this moment where she's just basically brought up all the important people in front of her and is like, kiss my butt. That's what you're here for. We're all going to sit around a room and sit around a table, and you're going to tell me how great I am.
Yeah, and then she really, Egwene's trying to hold her silence, and then Elida goes for one of her few weak spots when it comes to her control, and that's the Seanchan. And she demands that Egwene deny that the Seanchan are a threat. And Egwene's like, all right, that's one gauntlet throwdown too many. I'm going to have to hand you your ass now. You aren't going to like this.
No, you're not going to like this at all.
This is me taking out a can of whoop ass and cracking it.
Because, like, Elida demands that she lies. She's like, tell her you're lying, right? Like, tell her that this, which is when Elida has done that before. She's actually told people, like, you're lying because I don't believe the things, because I don't want to believe the things you're telling me are true.
Right. And Elida only has bullying to back her up. Right. There's this one paragraph from Egwene. There is often truth in speculation. You locked the dragon reborn himself in a box. You just threatened to do the same to me in front of all these witnesses. People call him a tyrant, but you are the one destroying our laws and ruling by fear. Like, you're throwing a lot of shade for someone who is doing the things that you're accusing us of doing, right? It's one of those, like, you're telling on yourself. Your accusations are telling on yourself far more than they are telling on us.
And so you'll make me obey? Is this what you will do to everyone in the Tower of Elida? An Ajah opposes you, and it is disbanded. Someone displeases you, and you try to destroy her right to be an Aes Sedai. You will have every sister bowing down before you by the end of this. Nonsense. Oh, Egwene asked. And have you told them about your idea for a new oath? Sworn on the oath rod by every sister, an oath to obey the Amyrlin and support her. Deny it. Deny that you made that statement. Will the oaths let you? Elida froze. It was idle. It was locker room talk, Elida said. Just speculation. Thoughts spoken out loud. There is often truth in speculation. And then that's the paragraph you read. Just such a good, there's so much, and there's even more to that. Like there's her just digging into her paragraph after paragraph after paragraph. Go ahead, use the power to silence me. As an Amyrlin, shouldn't you be able to talk an opponent into obedience rather than resorting to force, police state? Out of the corner of her eye, Egwene saw a diminutive Yukiri of the Grey nod at that comment, right? She's winning. And then she goes to, like, wins over the Ajahs one by one with her comments. She wins over the, shouldn't you be able to negotiate for the Grey? Like, I don't have the other ones in front of me.
And then there's the great line, you're not answering me, but them. You're not answering me, the person you don't respect as Amyrlin, even though I am. You are answering to the sitters who are sitting at that table over there, who are looking at the two of us wondering who they would rather have as Amerlin. That's who you have to be answering to. Again, Egwene understands the underlying point of the conversation.
Right. And then she goes on to question, like, what are you thinking trying to capture the Dragon Reborn and stick him in the basement? And she's like, I would have kept him secure and locked up. And Egwene goes, you idiot, look at the prophecies. You couldn't stop the prophecies from happening. And so you were doomed to fail by trying and ignoring the things the prophecy said, by trying to prevent the prophecies from happening, which is prevent him from, as the plow and all that kind of crap, where he's destroying lives and breaking bonds.
As the plow breaks the earth, shall he break the lives of men? Yeah.
Yes. All that crap.
All that poetic crap.
All of that basically is never going to, it had to happen. And if you were to capture him and stop that, the pattern itself will break you. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened. That's why your expeditions failed. That's why you were doomed to fail from the beginning. And the fact that you can't see that is why you're a terrible leader.
Right. And then we get the absolute banger slapdown knockout. Amazing part. Elaida says, enough of this. Coward, Egwene said. Elaida's eyes flared wide. How dare you? I dare the truth, Elaida, Egwene said quietly. You are a coward and a tyrant. I'd name you Darkfriend as well, but I suspect that the Dark One would perhaps be embarrassed to associate with you. Elaida screeched. It's like, yeah, that's a good line. Yeah. That's a good line.
And it's like, I'd call you a devil, but
the Dark One doesn't even want you.
He'll manipulate you. He'll use you, but you're not one of his. No one claims you as one of his.
He's not. He would not recruit you if you asked. Which, isn't really how the Dark One works, but that's beside the point.
And then Elaida goes fucking nuts and uses the One Power as a weapon.
And she starts raving, ranting and raving, and I feel like we're seeing the Herid Hall really uppermost in her. Yes. This is her as close to being Herid Hall as she ever is.
And this is one of those badass moments of Egwene where she is being beaten bloody to a pulp and she just stands up and looks her straight in the eyes and doesn't react. I mean, that's to me, that's gives me chills moment, right?
And I wouldn't believe it if she hadn't spent a month learning how to not react to being strapped.
Right.
Even though I don't like that whole arc, I wouldn't believe her capable of just pushing through this pain without having had all that practice. Unfortunately, that does make this land more believably.
Yeah, I just wish it wasn't spanking. I wish it was just more general beatings.
I'm imagining it more like a beating and less like a spanking, just to memory hole it correctly for plot reasons. I choose to believe.
Yeah. And I feel like this technicality around spanking really is them getting around no, they're beating her because they're not spanking her on her butt. They're striping her from head to toe. Right? Or no, that's just Avienda.
Yeah.
God, sorry. I'm mixing up the various groups of women who beat each other for discipline. Yeah.
Too many spankings.
Too many spankings.
But we have seen her literally getting beaten, basically bloody and then healed before many times. And she has slowly progressed over time to the point of not reacting. So it makes sense that in this moment of intensity, as Elaida needs to see that intense level of not reacting, Egwene has done the work for it. She's put in the hours to be able to just stand there.
You know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of have you seen those videos where they put people in the, I was going to say ovary machine.
Like a period pain simulator?
Yeah, period pain simulator.
Okay.
Thank you. I told you my brain is not doing words today. But yeah, the guys are like, oh my God, they're in so much pain. And the women are like, yep, that's what it feels like.
Yeah, see, I really want to try one of those because I don't believe those videos.
Exactly. Yeah,
I don't believe those videos at all.
I'd like to see what that. I also am curious, but
because it's first of all, I'm pretty sure I can recognize acting when I see it, and second of all, I have PCOS, which is not the same as normal, quote unquote, period. So I'm very curious how that simulator would stack up against my lived experience.
Same. I've been very curious to try it, even though it's I want to get shocked, right? But that's basically what I'm saying. Yeah, for science. Yeah. But it looks fun. Anyway, that's kind of what it reminds me of, is where she's just in pain, someone else will be bending over in pain, like unable to stand up, and she's just tolerating it because she's been exposed to it over and over and over again in her life.
Right. Right. Elida is applying an acute pain to someone who's been dealing with that level of intensity chronically. Like it just doesn't hit the same as she expects it to.
And in the same way that, like, you can get used to a buzzing, you can get, I mean,
right,
obviously you never really get used to chronic pain, right? Like that's not, but I feel like some people learn to live with it, even though it takes more energy to do so.
Yeah, listening to people who deal with chronic pain talk about how the pain scale makes no sense is very illuminating.
Right.
But yeah, you can see that playing out here with Egwene. And also she's thinking like, wow, this does really hurt. But like, she's in a heightened state of emotional intensity around the thing that she's been building her tolerance for pain on. It makes sense that she's able to just like, give Elida that like deadpan. Because Elida says, look at her for an example of what happens if you disobey me. And Egwene is just standing there like, bitch.
Yeah.
And all those sitters are like, oh, we will be taking her as an example. Yes.
Yeah.
You are defeatable and you need to be defeated and we need to figure this out like right now.
No, it's especially after that speech, right? This whole, there's nothing you can do to me. And then, the idea that there's nothing she can do because breaking the tower and the way she's acting to keep the tower broken is more painful than any beating Egwene could take. And I also feel like there's a little bit of, in a world where you can be healed, you can lose some emotional attachment to wounds because you don't have to suffer through the months or even weeks of pain and healing that you get from those wounds. It's like I might have to suffer for a few hours until they let me be healed.
Right. You might even get disfigured or crippled.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. Yeah, that does change the calculus around the emotional parts of pain for sure.
Exactly. And I feel like that's something where, I've now, because I worked in kitchens, I've burned myself enough times that I understand the difference between a burn that hurts and a burn that's going to need some healing and cause a scar and stuff like that. Right. Like, yeah. And I feel even though the pain is about the same, I feel very differently about one than I do about the other. Mm-hmm. Because one, I'm like, oh, fuck, right? I'm going to be a burn. That's going to suck. Got another scar. Whereas the ones where I'm like, ow, that's hot. And then I don't think about it again.
Right. Yeah, totally.
Anyway, don't burn yourself that much. You should.
Kitchens are dangerous.
Kitchens are really dangerous, especially professional ones. You're dumping a lot of things in hot oil.
Yeah.
Although I will say I probably hurt myself worse in a home kitchen. Just because, I don't know, there's something that you're distracted. I feel like in the professional kitchen, you're dialed in.
Well, that just depends on how mental hygiene works in your kitchen.
What? Mental what? I don't know. It's just a trash heap up here. We're stuffing emotions in corners and they're just rotten with some, sprinkle of anxiety all over the top of everything. Just kind of settles on everything like a dust.
Are you ready for me to do the readout?
Please. I want to get out of this chapter.
All right. I wish I weren't needed here, Elida, Egwene said softly. I wish that the tower had a grand Amerlin in you. I wish I could step down and accept your rule. I wish you deserved it. I would willingly accept execution if it would mean leaving a competent Amerlin. The White Tower is more important than I am. Can you say the same? You want execution? Elida bellowed, recovering her tongue. Well, you shall not have it. Death is too good for you, Darkfriend. I shall see you beaten. Everyone shall see you beaten until I am through with you. Only then will you die. She turned to the servants, who stood, gaping, at the sides of the room. Send for soldiers. I want this one cast into the deepest cell this tower can provide. Let it be voiced through the city that Egwene Alvier is a Darkfriend who has rejected the Amerlin's grace. Servants ran to do as she demanded. The switches continued to beat, but Egwene was growing numb. She closed her eyes, feeling faint. She had lost much blood from her left arm, which bore the deepest of her gashes. It had come to a head, as she'd feared it would. She had cast her lot, but she didn't fear for her life. Instead, she feared for the White Tower. As she leaned back against the wall, thoughts fading, she was overcome with sorrow. Her battle from within the tower was at an end, one way or another. Holy bystander effect, Batman. A room full of sitters couldn't stop the Amerlin from beating her to unconsciousness?
Nope. Well, especially when the person has power. That's when they're really hard to stop.
It is 12 on 1.
Would you want to be the first one? Because then she's going to remember you.
No, but you're a fucking sitter. I don't care what you want as an individual. You have power. You're required to use it.
With great power comes great cowardice.
We invested power in you through a pyramid-shaped structure. I expect you to be pointy. So yeah, that's an intense chapter, action sequence, but almost entirely with words. Brandon Sanderson did a fantastic job just painting that scene and letting the fireworks roll. And yeah.
And really letting the accumulation of everything that Jordan set up to come together in that moment and have this fiery moment of defiance that really moves the plot forward and is satisfying to read.
It's so satisfying. It's so good. Yeah.
And we were going to do the next chapter too. Do you want to still do that today?
It is what? How hard it is to get people through gateways and floor beans. In not that order. It goes floor beans and then how hard it is to get people through gateways. What were we doing next week? Were we trying to do a triple next week too?
I think if we added this one to it.
No, I mean, did we already have it scheduled to be a triple?
No, I don't think so. I think it's just double next week.
Go check because we did some shenanigans on our calendar.
Yeah, it's a double next week.
All right, then yeah, I think we should call it there. And yeah, slap this one on to next week because there's so little in this next chapter. But we have gone for 2 hours and 20 minutes, even with the tangents I'm going to take out. And
okay, long enough.
That's a chonk-ass chapter.
Sounds good to me. All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody. We should probably do Patreon soon. We've gotten a few new ones, I think. So
probably.
Time to give them some thanks relatively soon. Other than that, I can't think of anything else to touch on. Hopefully, life will be a little more stable in the near future for me. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, I would say consider joining my support group on Thursdays for fans of the Wheel of Time who are also neurodivergent. Try to find something in your local community to contribute to deal with the creepy existential dread, and hug your loved ones because meat suits are dumb. Other than that, support us on Patreon, drink water, and pet your dog.
And are you going to ever Realm of the Elderlings?
I downloaded it.
Excellent.
Creeping towards it, but I have not been able to really intake much new information unless it's horrible history about fascism. That's really the only new content I can listen to. It's either that or books I've read before.
Well, that's the great thing about the concept. You don't really have to do much research or pre-reading.
Yeah, that'd be good. We'll see. I did download it, pretty sure.
Okay.
I looked at it a lot, thought about downloading it. Did I download it? I don't know. That's how my brain is. Did I think about it or did I actually do it?
So, and that's why I'm saying something. Because I'm relatively serious about doing something with that.
Cool. Yeah, well.
Because I think we're going to plow through this pretty quickly.
We got through 3 chapters today quickly?
Yeah. Still 2.
We got a lot out of this.
Yeah, we got a lot out. Reading it, there was more in these 2 chapters than I thought there would be, and so I ended up being 3 is probably a stretch. That was probably overly ambitious of us.
But literally this upcoming chapter there's nothing.
Oh, it's nothing. Yeah, it's nothing. So I'm hoping that maybe the next 3 chapter, we'll just do a 3-chapter next one. Or we'll just keep doing 2 chapters or we'll just do a single chapter at some point and just, that'll be a short episode. We'll figure it out.
All I know is that Floor Beans does not deserve a whole episode, and it's not getting one.
I think that's where we should end it.
Yeah, that's the line we should end recording on. All right, thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Yeah, we both have a lot going on in our personal lives right now. I mean, mine's starting to settle down a little bit. Like the puppy that I got is starting to, not be a new puppy, but a puppy who's been here for a few weeks. We're settling into the new house. I'm starting to put things away, so I know where it is. Oh, some of you haven't seen. Yes. So for those of you who haven't heard the story, Travis got this puppy from his neighbor who just threw it out on the street because they did not want it anymore. We tracked down its original owners and officially, which was not the people who had it at the time, basically they didn't want him anymore. They'd lost him a long time ago, and he ended up with the people he was with. And so, yeah, he didn't have a home, so he ended up with us. And he is a bit of a terror because he is a 8-month-old puppy who has been terribly, terribly trained.
Oh, you should tell the story about what he did today. Or the other day.
Because he does so much. You're gonna have to. What?
No, with finding the timber toy.
Oh yeah. Okay, that's right. That's right. The one I just told you about. That story. Yeah. So as you know, I'm moving, and so moving with a brand new puppy is a little hard. But one of the things I'm doing is, I was basically out of the place, and I had to go back one more time to do sort of an empty out of the trash, right? The trash that had basically, there's a pile of some carpet padding and a few other some plastic junk that I had in a pile in one of the bedrooms that I just needed to get rid of. And so the dog's wandering around the empty apartment, and I'm gathering all this stuff up. I forget I'm doing something, I'm scrubbing something or cleaning something. And he walks over to the pile of trash, sniffs around in there, and pulls something out of it. And that thing was actually a crocheted version of timber that Abigail made for me. I don't know if you remember, this is back one of the original spoiler cons. She made a crocheted version of Timber and a crocheted version of me. And that's been sitting on my desk this whole time. And just in the move out, it must have fallen off. It must have fallen into the padding. And just, sadly, unfortunately, sometimes I lose things when I'm moving. And yeah, I thought this would have been thrown out. It was in a pile of trash. And Harvey, my new dog, went in and pulled out the stuffy of Timber and handed it to me. He was like,
He's
Dad,
the best
you
boy.
you forgot this. You need to have this. And I was like,
Such a good boy.
okay, that's adorable. I burst into tears. No joke. I was sobbing by myself in my apartment, holding on to that little figurine of Timber.
And Harvey's just like, Dad, this smells like you. I don't think you want to get rid of it.
Yeah, he's like, you don't want to get rid of this. This is something significant.
So he's not only a very good boy, he's the very best boy.
Yeah. So he won my heart pretty quickly. He's a snuggle bug. He's got some nipping behavior that puppies should normally at this age be grown out of, and he's not potty trained as he should be at this age. But again, it's just he's young enough, we can still learn. He looks like, he's got big paws. He looks like he's going to be really big, but he's 50 pounds right now. And I've been weighing him. We've had him long enough that I'm charting his growth. And I think he's going to top out at about 75 pounds. Now, watch me eat my words when he's 150 pounds.
We will be holding you to that.
Yeah. But he is, and the thing is, I tracked down his original owners, and he was adopted from the Oregon Humane Society. So I have his original adoption papers, which include his original birth date. So I know exactly how old he is, right? So he is just over 8 months old. And so at 50 pounds, at 8 months old, when you put that into all the calculators that, look at dog weight and based on breed, and they say 75 to 80 pounds max. And honestly, he's only gained, I've had him now for, almost a month. And he's only gained 2 or 3 pounds. So it's really, it appears that his growth is slowing down. He just has giant paws and a long ass tail. I think he's just going to look a little goofy.
He's just a big lanky boy.
He's just a big lanky boy. Yeah, he's long. So we'll see. Like I said, replay this in 6 months. When he is a giant dog that is absolutely terrorizing me, but
no, he's just a big snuggle bug.
But oh my God, he is the snuggliest dog. He absolutely loves snuggles, loves belly rubs, will flop on his back for belly rubs pretty much all the time. Yeah, and I'm just getting to know him. I'm getting to know his personality. I don't know if you've heard the 3-day, 3-week, 3-month rule with dogs.
You told me about it last time, but that was the first time I'd ever heard about it.
But yeah, so it's basically 3 days, they're still terrified. They don't know if this is the place where they're getting to know this is a place I'm going to be in the future, right? As opposed to getting moved around. And then they need 3 weeks to sort of accommodate themselves to routine. And then 3 months before their personality really shows up. And so those are all pretty big milestones in terms of when you're going to see behavioral changes in a new dog.
Well, I look forward to meeting him.
Yes. and I've seen that. And, the first 3 days he was a terror. And now after about 3 weeks, he's starting to like settle in a little bit, get into the routine. He's not having accidents inside anymore because he's figured out when he's going potty and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So, and those are obviously very, very rough estimates.
Right. Every personal dog is going to be different, but yeah.
So love him. He's a cute boy. You will probably hear more about him in the future. He's not as vocal as Timber was for sure, but he can complain a little bit. When you say no to him, it's the only time you can like train him. But if you want something and you say no, he goes, "Ow." Wow.
That's so cute.
Yeah, so very cute.
Well, I look forward to having him down here to run around on my property. Hopefully he won't be quite as allergic to the grass as Timber was.
Yeah, he doesn't seem to have the same skin allergies, although I'm more allergic to him than I was to Timber. I'm finding that I'm actually having some reactions to him, which is unfortunate, but mostly just skin reactions, so I can wear a shirt.
Right. Life. It's uncomfortable. Bodies are stupid.
we were talking about how much it sucks that we have to, pilot these meat machines that hurt and don't function well.
Yeah.
Intelligent design, my ass.
They're prone to breakage and failure in all sorts of fun ways. And it's great. I mean, we're not even getting into all the fucking coup shit that is happening in these crumbling empire states of America Incorporated. Not even getting into that. But it's coup time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We're not making it to our 250th birthday. We're just gonna faceplant.
I'm struggling to know how serious to take this, honestly. I mean, I take it seriously, but serious isn't the right word. I'm struggling with my words today. I can like I'm saying words that don't mean exactly what I want them to say, Mm-hmm. So much of his movement is noise and sound designed to distract you from what he's actually doing. I get very frustrated with knowing what to pay attention to. It's hard to know what to pay attention to. And the coup seems to be a big deal, but then so many of the things he does are put out there to distract you and then pulled back immediately the second they find any sort of resistance, so that then his more or slightly less outlandish things can go through. Does that make sense? It's the Gish Gallop of bullshit.
Yeah, it's called flooding the zone. Steve Bannon was very clear that was what they were going to do. It's all been laid out in painstaking
and it's incredibly
detail
effective.
And
it's incredibly effective
and looked at, and everyone knows exactly what their fucking playbook is. And Elon Musk is kind of the thing that seems like more of a issue to pay attention to, because he's not literally demented. He's just evil.
Yeah, and Athlon is. Thank you. That's a boostering statement that the courts are serving as an effective bulwark, right?
It only works if they obey the courts, which they fucking aren't.
Right.
That's the problem, is we have clowns with flamethrowers just running around, and everyone's like, well, that's not allowed. It doesn't fucking matter what's allowed. They are doing it anyway. They let one fucking security guard keep them out of that one building. One side is continuing to go by decorum, and the other side is stuffing their pockets and shitting on everything. It's like, I can't even pay attention to what Trump is doing because of fucking Elon and his fucking teenage fucking Hitler Youth posse just taking this is fine. Yeah, the courts they don't care what the courts are doing. They don't care what the courts say.
All right. That's enough politics on this podcast. I'm frustrated with it, but I don't have anything useful to say.
White supremacy culture is leading to the end of the world.
I agree with that. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
It's fucking great. Let's distract ourselves with the words of a white man from the South.
Yep.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Please rate and review us on your podcast app, and consider supporting us on Patreon for ad-free episodes. What Spoilers is a production of Fox and Raven Media. For more podcasts from Fox and Raven Media, visit our website at foxandravenmedia.com.